Hello my students and welcome to the first episode on complex numbers. And let's have a look at these two questions. The square root of 16 and x squared equals 16. If I asked you about the square root of 16, so I'm asking about the positive square root of 16, which is 4. Because 4 times 4 equals 16. But if we have an equation like this equation, x squared equals 16, so I'm asking about the variable because x is a variable. What is the number? What is the real number? When we multiply by itself twice, we get 16. Actually, we have two numbers. We can say it's 4 because 4 times 4 equals 16. And we can say negative 4 because negative 4 times negative 4, as you know, negative multiplied by negative is positive, and 4 times 4 equals 16. So here, x squared equals 16. What is the value of x? It's a positive or negative, the square root of 16. So it's a positive or negative, the square root of 16, which is 4. Okay? Let's have a look at this equation. It's x squared equals negative 16. Okay? What is the value? When we multiply by itself twice, we get negative 16. Actually, we don't have an exact number. When we multiply by itself twice, we get negative 16. Because if you tried to multiply 4 by 4, you will get 16. And if you tried to multiply negative 4 by negative 4, it will be 16. And don't say it's 4 multiplied by negative 4. Do you know why? Because they are two different numbers. So, what is the square root of negative 16 if the solution was in the real numbers? So, the solution set here in this case equals 5. But what I'm going to talk about today, it's something called complex numbers. And if I asked you about the square root of negative 1, what is the square root of negative 1? I don't know what is the square root of negative 1, but what is the number when we multiply by itself twice we get negative 1? There is no number. When we multiply by itself we get negative 1. So assume that it's I. What is I? I is an imaginary number. ببساطة كده الاي دي اللي هي ايه؟ دي يعني زي كده افتكاسة. أنا مش عارف إيه هو السكوير روت أوف نيجاتيف 1، فأنا بفترض إن هو أي. إيه هي أي دي يا مستر؟ ده imaginary number. يعني إيه imaginary number؟ ده تخيلي، يعني مش في الواقع خالص. يعني what is I؟ I is equal to the square root of negative 1. What is the square root of negative 1؟ مفيش على أرض الواقع square root of negative 1. So I assumed that the square root of negative 1 it's I. So here in this case, you know, we can find the value of x. How can we get the value of x? Pay attention, everyone. So x equals what? Positive or negative? The square root of negative 16. We can write this negative 16 as what? Pay attention. It's the square root of 16 multiplied by negative 1. Okay? And we have here 16 under the square root, and we have negative 1. So we can write it as positive or negative, the square root of 16 multiplied by the square root of negative 1. Okay? And all of us know that the square root of 16, it's 4. So it's a positive or negative 4. What is the square root of negative 1? The square root of negative 1, as you know, I assumed that the square root of negative 1, it's I. So what is the solution here of this equation? So x equals what? X equals positive or negative 4i. Once again, what is I? I is equal to the square root of negative 1. The next. So as I said, the square root of negative 16, there are not two numbers exactly the same that multiply together to give us negative 16. And I, what is I? Is the square root of negative 1, as I said. So square root of negative 16, it's the square root of 16 multiplied by negative 1. I wrote them as the square root of 16 and multiplied by the square root of negative 1, which is I. Right, let's go to the next. Here, what is the square root of negative 28? If you asked someone about the square root of negative 28, who is studying in prep stage, he will say there is no square root of a negative number. And actually, he is right. But we can write the square root of 28, negative 28, as 28 multiplied by what? Negative 1. Please, you can pause the video and have a go. Come back when ready. حاول كده تشتغل معايا الحصة كأنك في السنتر بالظبط. فبتعمل ايه سيادتك؟ وقف الفيديو عادي خالص وحاول تحل. وبعد ما تحل تعال نشوف الحل مع بعض. Okay? So here we wrote a square root of negative 28. It's 28 multiplied by negative 1. So we can write it as a square root of 28 multiplied by square root of negative 1. What is the square root of negative 1? It's I. Okay? And let's find the value of 28, square root of 28. You know, square root of 28 can be written as 4 times 7. Okay? 4 times 7 equals 28. What is the square root of 4? The square root of 4 equals 2. So we'll write it as 2 root 7 I. That's it. So what is the square root of negative 28? It's 2 root 7 I. Let's go to the next example. Here. What is the square root of negative 12? Okay. Please, once again, pause the video and have a go. Come back when ready to check your solution against mine. Here, negative 12, it's 12 multiplied by negative 1. What is the square root of 12? And what is the square root of negative 1? As you know, we can write it directly. The square root of negative 1, it's I. So it's I. What is the square root of 12? 12, we can write it as 4 times 3. So it's the square root of 4 times 3 multiplied by I. What is the square root of 4? It's 2. So it's 2 root 3I. That's it. The next one, I have an equation. This equation is x squared plus 49 equals 0. And I want to get the value of x. And I think you are familiar with it now. You can get the value of x. You can do it depending on yourself. So x squared equals negative 49, as you see here. So what is the square root of negative 49? We can write it as, it's a positive or negative. Don't forget it, positive or negative. The square root of negative 49. And the negative 49 can be written as positive or negative. You can do it quickly. It's 49 I. Why I did write I? Because it's 49 multiplied by negative 1 and I wrote it many times. So you can write it times the square root of negative 1, which is I. Okay? So it's a positive or negative. Square root of 49 equals what? 7I. That's the solution of this equation. Okay, I want to get the value of x here. It's a quadratic equation, and if you tried to factorize it, I'm asking about two numbers, their product 10 and their sum negative 7. Actually, there is no two numbers. When we multiply them together, we get 10. When we add them, we get negative 6. So we are going to use the general formula. Do you remember it? X equals what? Negative b, positive or negative the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. You have studied it before. How can we get the value of x? What is a, what is b, what is c? A is the coefficient of x. A is the coefficient of x squared, because any quadratic equation is written in this format: x squared minus bx plus c equaling 0. So what is a? A is 1. The coefficient of x squared is 1. And what is b? The coefficient of x is negative 6. And what is c? C, the absolute term, which is 10. So x is equal to what? Negative b, negative 6, positive or negative. The square root of b squared, it's negative 6 raised to the power of 2. You with me? Minus 4 multiplied by a, which is 1, multiplied by c, which is 10. All divided by 2a. It's 2 multiplied by 1. So let's tidy it up. Negative times negative equals what? Equals 6. So it's a positive or negative, the square root of negative 6 raised to the power of 2, 36, minus 4 times 1 times 10, which is 40. All divided by 2. So it's 6 positive or negative, the square root of 36 minus 40 equals what? Equals negative 4 divided by 2 times 1, which is 2. So here, what is the problem? The problem is having a square root of negative 4. And as I said, if you ask someone who is studying in prep 3 stage, he will say the solution set is 5. Yes, the solution set in real numbers is 5. But today, we have studied the complex numbers. So what is the square root of negative 4? We can write it as 4 times negative 1. It's 4 times negative 1, so we can write it directly. It's instead of negative 4, we can write the square root of 4i, all divided by 2. So it's a 6, positive or negative. What is the square root of 4 is 2, I, all divided by 2. So we have two solutions now. It's a 6 plus 2i divided by 2 and 6 minus 2i divided by 2. So we can tidy it up. 6 divided by 2, it's 3, as you see here. And 2i divided by 2, it's I. That's the first solution. And the second solution, it's 6 divided by 2, it's 3. Negative 2i divided by 2, it's negative I. ده كان ملخص كده سريع او فكره سريعه عن الكومبلكس نمبرز. وزي ما قلت لكم ده هيكون انا الشغل بتاعي يكون ماشي ازاي كده بسرعه. هناخد الكونسبت كده ببساطه في حصه صغيره، بعدين الحصه اللي بعدها هنكمل التريكي كويستشنز على الكونسبت اللي احنا اخدناه، والحصه الثالثه هناخد فيدباك بعد ما سيادتك تحل الهومورك. I hope you enjoyed this session. See you in the coming episodes. Goodbye.